Before we get into that, though, we've tried to make sure that we discuss funding opportunities in every one of our discussions, just because that's something that can be beneficial to everyone. For the two that I'd like to discuss today, it'll be pretty brief. I want to make sure that Dan and Matt have a chance to go through this as much as they can with everyone. But two that I'd like to highlight are the Rusty LT program, which covers distance learning and telemedicine in rural communities, as well as the NSF Cyber Infrastructure program, which is geared towards higher ed. Those are two programs that have technology at their focus. Cyber infrastructure is more of a planning program that helps to address long-term cyber infrastructure, technology infrastructure planning within the higher educational system and for those individual institutions. We also have the distance learning and telemedicine program, which is about helping to deliver resources through technology, whether you're in a rural community or in a more metropolitan or suburban community, as long as the impact area is a rural community. So that will kind of depend on, I don't know if everybody here on this event would benefit from a program like that, but we've seen that's a common one within education. That's common for healthcare, colleges, and those trying to deliver, let's say, training courses from where they're at. You can use as an example, let's say the city of Orlando. If there is UCF that's delivering rural training to someone in, let's say, rural North Florida. That's how that program would work. I think one of our previous discussions, we also discussed the process of vetting and determining where you would fit or where you would align with the grant program. Just want to kind of touch on that again. As you're looking at what types of grants could be available for you, you want to make sure that your goals for your project align with the available priorities. Different grants are going to have different priorities, but anytime that you're looking at a grant, you don't necessarily want to look at the technology that you're looking to purchase or what it is that you need from a technology standpoint. It's the impact. It's the priority in that. And we've seen a couple of grants come out with a priority focused on technology, like the NSF Cyber Infrastructure Program, but those are rare. More often, you're going to see grant programs that are dedicated to, let's say, distance learning and telemedicine, where technology is a part of that, but the goal is to increase the delivery of training resources, medical resources, educational materials to individuals in isolated areas or areas that are not as resource rich or have access to those resources as frequently and as often. So when you're looking at, let's say, a local government entity, what's the impact you're trying to make? Is it public safety? Is it professional development? Is it education? Are you supporting administrative functions? Do you manage any utilities? And would this project you're working on assist with the delivery of those utilities or help to secure those utilities, which can also have a public safety component built into that as well. Within education, both at the K-12 and the higher ed level, we've seen STEM as a priority in a variety of programs. So anything that you do, if there's a way that it touches STEM, trying to determine how your upcoming projects impact that STEM environment would help you to determine which types of programs you may be able to utilize. Also, when we're looking at larger entities, or if we're looking at those within the nonprofit space, private sector, but nonprofit, those are the same ways that you're looking at those. What's the service area? What's the impact? How does your particular technology project impact a particular high priority area or the particular priority areas of that grant? So I know it can be a bit of a challenge, and this is why we always try to remind folks we have those grant support resources in place to assist you with your grant strategy, research and development efforts, writing efforts, as well as post-award and management projects. But it can be a rather long process to find the right grant for you, to write a good application and to win that grant. But you're going to want to make sure you go through those steps, because it's better to go through that long process than to go and try to do it quickly and strike out, or worse, you get something, you win something, and you don't know what to do with it, or you've requested it for something that's not exactly what you need it for. So grants can be a rather involved process, but they are incredibly high impact, incredibly high value. And if we are taking the time to go through those with you and go through slowly, we can find something for you. It'll just depend on, what the impact area is, what your goals are, and how that aligns with those available priorities. And also remember, timeline of grant is almost more important than anything else. If you only have, a week or 2 weeks to turn something around, it's probably not going to be worth it. But if you can find it at the right time and give yourself a good window, like the DLT program is an annual one, it comes around every year. I believe it's supposed to be in the fall, but this one opened up in the beginning of this year. I'm not sure if it'll go back to its normal fall deadline or go back to or continue to be at the beginning of the year. We're waiting to get clarity on that. That NSF program that's open to colleges is going to be open in September of this year, reopening in September of this year. So those are things to keep track of as well as you're looking at programs. What's the timeline? What's the priority? What's the impact area? And how does my technology project align with that impact area? I know that's a lot to throw at everyone, but again, feel free to reach out to us if you're looking for more clarity, any assistance in any way, and we'll do our best to support you. But I'd like to end my time now and make sure I pass it off to Dan and Matt so they can go into the technical stuff.
Thanks, Saeed. This is Dan Radke. There are two of us on here from AMD Pensando, myself and Matt Isdell. Matt is going to lead us in just a minute on what the user interface for Aruba Fabric Composer, as well as Pensando's Policy Services Manager, and how to manage the environment. I just wanted to give a quick 2-minute update on our summary of what it is that we're talking about again today. Pensando partnered with Aruba to build a security appliance, the Aruba CX10000. It is a 1RU 48-port switch, primarily used as a top-of-rack switch with stateful security functions built into it. Everything from an 800 gig firewall to a IPsec encryption, VPN tunneling capabilities, visibility or telemetry capabilities, as well as the ability to integrate with other ecosystem partners such as Nutanix, Splunk, ExtraHop, Gigamon, and VMware. And as an example of VMware, you can use VM names, labels, and tags to manage or control your macro or micro segmentation policy analysis. So that's a big picture summary. Just want to make sure everybody's familiar with what we're here to talk about. Given that, Matt, are you there?
I am here. Appreciate it. Thanks, Dan.
It's all yours. Carly, if we could stop viewing your screen, I'm going to let Matt share and we'll go from there.
All right. So let me see here. Let me pull this up. So I wasn't sure exactly where to start here. We were looking at doing a PSM and AFC demo. So where I'm going to jump in is to talk about the management platform that we have and how it works before we see the demo. So let me know if you can see this screen.
Yes, I can.
All right. And I got a few windows shared the screen, so let me know at any time if it's not displaying what I'm talking about, because it's just sharing the screen, not the actual window. So yeah, so Matt Isdell, I am the technical consulting engineer that works with Dan, handle a lot of the integrations and the questions about how to operate the CX10K platform with the distributed services. So today, what I really want to cover to start out is just the operation and manageability of it. We get a lot of questions around what does it look like when you move something like this into your environment? And the one way we like to describe this is it is a centrally managed, fully distributed data plane. Right? So the idea is we have the central single point of management. We have some of the tools that we'll talk about today. The main one's called PSM, Policy and Services Manager. We'll talk about some of the integrations that we have there. And really what we are attempting to do is to give you a single point of view or a smaller, maybe one or two tools that you use in your environment to manage a fully distributed data center. So you can think that when you put configurations in, if you had one pair of CX10000 switches, or if you had 20 pairs of CX10000 switches, that the management of those would effectively be the same. They would all roll up to the same manager. So the slide you're looking at here really just talks about the operation of the CX10000 as a switch and also as a distributed services switch. So at the top, you can see this is the networking piece. It has all the functionality, AOS CX, that is involved in the Aruba operating system. In fact, when you initially get the switch, you can turn it on. You can use it just like you would any other AOS CX switch. And then once you start to enable the stateful security services, we have a policy and services manager tool that we're going to talk about today that manages those functionalities, right? So things like security policies, logging off the traffic that is seen there, those things are set through a different interface. And there is one of the things we'll talk about today certainly is the integration between some of the tools that you use on the networking side and the tools that you use on the security side. There's some groups that have very separated teams for those roles. There's some groups where that is a function that one team handles, and we're certainly able to to amend either role-based access controls or give granular type controls to the different teams as well. So if you have any concerns there, questions there, please don't be shy. We'll share that as well. And then the next one here is just talking about what PSM actually does for us. So we can run PSM in a couple of ways. Typically in an environment, you run it as a cluster. You can run 3 instances together, and that's really for high availability. And you can log in any instance. They have a database that they share, so all of them are active. If one goes down, you should be able to run with no impact with the other 2 that are there. And each PSM or PSM cluster is talking to your fabric of switches, right? So you'll see some words. We call this a tenant. It could be called a fabric. But really what it is it's a collection of switches in your environment that are receiving the configurations from the management platform. I won't read you off the things on the side there, but we do a lot. You can also use it for visibility, right? You can do logging of some of your switches back to PSM if you wanted to do any type of analysis there. We have some tools that we're building in there. Certainly you have the capability to log directly from the switch out to your other tools that you're using in the environment as well. And the configuration and backup, you can do switch configurations and policy configurations and backups all through the management platform as well. I will say too, on PSM, we actually have a full REST API that is built into it. So for areas and groups that are doing any type of automation, or if they want to do some analysis by querying information, we have those capabilities as well. And we actually use that API to integrate with other management platforms such as Aruba Fabric Composer, which we'll see today, and vCenter if you're operating in a hybrid physical / virtual network. This goes along with what I was just saying. We've done some work and we continue to grow in the area of automation. So if you look at what we're attempting to do, the things that we bring, it's a lot of visibility. It's a lot of traffic. It's a lot of that security that comes along with being able to make decisions in more granular parts of the network. And to do that successfully at scale, you're going to need to implement some sort of automation. So we're really focusing on that as well. You can see here what we've started. There's a full Python library bindings that come along with each release that we have. There's Ansible playbooks and modules. We have our technical product management team manage those and build those. It's all open source. We've had customers that have built a few that have shared back, and also with other partners, right? So Aruba Fabric Composer, using some of the automation that they have built in. And we'll touch on that a little bit. We'll talk about just the general idea of Aruba Fabric Composer, and then why it makes sense when you have a AOS CX infrastructure along with the CX 10,000 involved in the security services as well. So I can't see any of the questions or if there's anything up there. So if there's anything that we need to answer, somebody just pop in, let me know. Otherwise, I'll just keep talking. All right, take that as a no. So again, just some of the operations just to think about. It really is the way I like to describe it. It's a centrally managed system that's fully distributed, right? It's distributed across all the switches that are in the environment. So if you manage 1 pair, 10 pairs, 20 pairs, the idea is that your time and your management expense, right, the time that you need to manage your consideration should be pretty equal, very scalable. All right, so let me remove this. We'll go into this here. All right, so you should be seeing now, what you're seeing is that PSM dashboard. And this is actually, as you can see, this is a piece that comes along with AMD Pensando. This VM is available through the Aruba support portal. When you utilize the CX10Ks, you would download it. comes as it runs as a VM. Like I said, you can run it in 3 VMs into a cluster. We do provide clean installs. We have OVAs, QCals, and there is an upgrade file as well. So if you install it and you need to upgrade to the next version, it's not a full install, right? You can step up from where you're at to the next install. So, and if you're familiar with firewall management, we've taken that same type of approach, right? We wanted to provide an interface that if you needed to use it to manage the devices, absolutely you could. It was clean, it was concise, not a whole lot of just fluff into it. So you'll see that we've really tried to keep it manageable, and also we've built in some of the capabilities, like I was mentioning, that if you're using other tools today to manage these configurations, these types of configurations, Ansible, some Python, maybe some sort of SOAR tool, or if you are using Aruba Fabric Composer, it's really easy to integrate this management into that control plane. So I'll step through some of these real quick. You can look at the system. I actually just have a one VM running here in the cluster information. So you can see that I just have one. You can run it as 1 or 3. Most times in small, lab environments, proof of concepts, things like that, we'll just run it in 1 unless we need to test failover. You can also see the switches that are managed. This is an environment that we use commonly up and down for access. So we have switches that come in and out of here. Today, there's no switches in it, but I like it because we're actually able to make changes if necessary into this environment. It's not a static lab. And then we close this out. I'm going to scoot down to the bottom here because I want to save some of the actual management of the configuration of the policies towards the end. But you can see here, very standard, what you would see for enterprise firewall management, right? You have the ability to do snapshots. You can upload your own certificates in there if you need to do that into your environment. You can generate tech support files. We have the ability to do user management along with role-based access control in here. You can build these custom roles. If you had a security group, or if you had even like a help desk, right? And they only needed to log in, maybe you wanted them to view the configurations or part of the configuration, but not be able to actually change it. You would just create the roles. You could assign the users to the roles, and then that would be what they would see and what they would access in the platform. We have different types of authentication. You can test against LDAP, Radius, pretty standard things there. One of the neat things that they built in here too, and goes back to the automation piece, is this API capture. So we do have a Postman collection that we will publish. We post some things like a Swagger collection as well, standards there. But if you're looking at the device and you're troubleshooting, or maybe you're building some of the calls for some scripts that you're writing, and you wanted to know what those calls were, you can actually do what we call a live capture. So if I turn this on, you see that this pops up here. And then as I start to click around into the UI, right, what I should see here is I should see those API commands be generated as well. So I can enable live capture. I can go to the user interface and actually do what it is that I want to do, and come back here, and I can get the actual API command and the syntax that I want to do. If I wanted to say put that into a script, or if I wanted to write that into an API call. All right. So getting into the meat of this here, we have this idea, what we call a tenant. So today, when you look at Policy and Services Manager, multi-tenancy is something that is being developed. It's actually going to be delivered on the next release, which is coming soon. But this idea of tenant is that the same word that we talked about with Fabric. It's the collection of devices that are being managed with the same configuration. So in here, I would see all the tenant information. I could see all my VRFs, all my information, all my layer 2, layer 3 information here. You come here, I see all the VRFs that are created in this environment, and I can see the networks that go along with that. The network certainly is just the layer 2 information. And this is important, right? This is typically, unless you're running some sort of layer 2 firewall, this is important information for us because this is how you actually start to do the types of segmentation and the types of security filtering that you're looking for when you start to implement these distributed services. So we're actually able to take this information, and as we create it in PSM, there's a process that updates the each CX10000 switch and lets it know that, okay, when I see traffic that comes in with this particular tag, the first action is to redirect that so that I can actually do my services and inspection. And that's the mechanism. So if you're familiar with any type of service direction or service insertion, it's typically, you're taking the packet, maybe you reroute it outside of the box. This happens all inside the switch. There's nothing for you to manage. So in this case right here, if I wanted to do inspection or a policy enforcement, or if I wanted to do gain visibility into VLAN 203, by creating this and pushing this down to the switch, that's the only operation and the only configuration that I have to do in order to have that traffic adhere to a policy that I have set up for it. And it goes anywhere VLAN 203 shows up in the network. It'll go to any of the racks, potentially multi-data center, wherever you're managing these switches. That's the only configuration you make, right? You tell it what you need to inspect. And if for some instance, I said I no longer wanted to do that, or it was not one that I wanted to inspect anymore, or I was changing it, when I remove that configuration, that action happens in reverse. It actually does not get inspected anymore. It gets switched and routed just like regular traffic. It doesn't actually go up for redirection, service insertion. So that is about as clean as you're gonna see. Introducing these distributed services into an environment. There's no redirecting outside of the box. There's no taking hairpinning it up to another device so that you can actually provide some sort of firewalling inspection, which is a common practice today. It all happens inside each individual device, and that's that distributed architecture that I was referencing earlier. All right, so we have this networking information, and we have the VRFs in here. And certainly, if you're familiar with networking, VRF is a collection of networks. I can actually apply policy, as we'll see, in different levels. So if I get in here to the security policies, this is the rules, right? This is what you want to have happen on your network, what you want to allow, what you do not want to allow. So if I come in here and I create a policy, and I'll click on this one here. So I named this policy, it's called protect DB, and then I've added these rules to it. And I've put this information in, and these are the rules that if traffic matching this VRF that's inside this VRF right here, if the networks and traffic inside this VRF hit this policy, these are the rules that they're going to adhere to. I can allow it, deny it, right? Very standard firewalling rules. I will say some of the things that are of note coming up. We're working on doing some, the ability to dynamically create these source and destination addresses, right? So you think about if you're running a virtual environment, right? Maybe a VMware environment, and you're creating tags or you're creating some sort of labels in that environment that your server administrators are using as they bring VMs up and they bring VMs down, right? In this environment, it's very dynamic. So what would be really nice is when you take those tags and those labels that are already being used, and you can apply them to the physical architecture as well. So we'll be able to take that and then query vCenter, in this case, query vCenter, and say, okay, tell me everything that is part of this tag, and then we'll take that information and we'll put it into the policy. And then as that tag and as the membership changes, that would change dynamically in this rule set as well. So it's the merging between the physical security architecture and the virtual security architecture, right? You wouldn't have to go, this wouldn't be two separate actions anymore. It would just be the one action based on what you created. So pretty straightforward, like I said. When you hear the full policy, usually when Dan gives the presentation, he talks about this. Why do customers want to move to this type of architecture, and why is this important? Because you look at it, and there's a couple of main reasons that really differentiate what we're able to do just today, and not even thinking about the enhancements that are coming along. Number one, the statement or the fabric becomes stateful, right? So when we redirect this traffic up there, we actually do initiator and responder flows. So if you send traffic up through this these distributed services, we're actually going to create a reverse flow and expect the traffic that what it looks like when it comes back. And if it doesn't look like that, then it's not going to return, right? Very different than from a stateless type of architecture where packets are just switched or routed just based on some of the header information. So we're bringing in some stateful connection tracking there. Number two, scale. For customers that are already looking to go in this direction, one of the more common architectures only has a really limited TCAM buffer size, and it really starts to max out around the 8,000 kind of enforcement line. Maybe call them ACLs. They are stateless, so we'll just call them ACLs. It really starts to really max out the management space around 8,000 ACLs. We've been, because of the architecture and because of the way that we've developed this, we're scaling now in this environment right here. If you had to build, say, up to 1 million of these rules, you could do that on this environment with limited impact to the throughput, to the hardware, to the time that it takes packets to traverse that module. So just on scale alone, and just on bringing it to like a stateful environment, those are two huge security-minded enhancements that we're seeing customers really ask about and really look forward to. All right, so I'll keep it going here. We have the same thing for apps. Like I said, this is so you may have heard, or we talk about this and the idea of a firewall, and it certainly can do that, right? We build policy and we adhere to policy. It's a stateful firewall, right? So you see layer 3 information there. You also see this layer 4 information here. So in the apps here is where you would build that information. I've built out some of these. We were messing around with these. You can see these are actually, if you look at Tanium, these are all the ports that Tanium uses. So I can build an app that allows the ports that Tanium uses. And I'm only doing a layer 4 inspection, but I'm containing all that information that product might use. I could do the same thing if I had VXLAN traffic on here, which uses 4789. I can build this type of traffic out. In the data center, we don't typically, we're looking more for machine to machine. So it's pretty standard of what type of traffic we want to get there. And you can see I'll just show you real quick. If I add this, it's really simple that I can go in and I can create any type of protocol that I have running in my data center. I can do GREs, and I can add second ones. So I can build these. So you don't have to just do one-offs. You can build groups of these, and you can use them in multiple policies. Very similar to service objects that you may have heard called as well. So there's a couple options when we export the traffic out as well. We use, like I mentioned, we use open standards. So there's NetFlow traffic that comes out, there's syslog traffic that comes out. We've introduced the ability to also do per flow IP fix. So we have a template, an IP fix template, and every flow that we see coming through the network, we populate the template and send out a log to there's whichever tools can actually process it, right? There's a number of tools that can. IPFix is an open standard, so it's growing. But if you're familiar with IPFix, you'll also know that the templates are unique to the product, right? There's IE fields that each product can validate and that may be unique to them. We actually have 2 that are unique to us, so we can send that out. We can build those templates out to the SIEM tools. They can integrate with Splunk or Elk or whoever you have running ArcSite. Very flexible. A very good focus, I would say probably like a high focus just on open standards, right? We don't want to build anything that's proprietary that you can't use to integrate with the environment that you're already running. And I have a couple of profiles here you can see, right? If maybe I wanted to send only denied logs and I want to send them to this destination over here, because there's a group of folks that are really interested in that. They're not concerned with what was allowed. Or if I want to send all my logs to a SIEM, I can do that as well. And pretty standard. We tried to keep it slim. It's enterprise firewall management, but we're very focused on what it is that we're providing policy around. We're not trying to add too much overhead to it as well. If you're logging back to PSM, you can actually analyze the logs here. You saw that there was no switches connected to this. So I don't have any logs to analyze on this particular environment here. But if I wanted to, I could come in here and I could analyze the logs. I could start seeing who was talking to who in my environment. I can also build policy based off of what I see here. And that's really a good way for smaller environments as they're starting up, you can start to see that traffic. One of the things that we find commonly is that customers don't have visibility into basically to the conversation that are happening at the switch port level. So a lot of the logs that we're generating is new data, new information to them. It's not something that they already have a policy where we just transform it into this. We're generating new data, new capabilities. Right? So we can do if you're looking at say inter VLAN type traffic, if you're not doing that today, or even down to micro-segmentation options where you're doing intra VLAN. If you have private VLANs running and you have multiple guests that run on a host and you're doing inspection between the two, if you don't see that traffic today, then it's really hard to determine what that policy looks like. You can start to gather the logs, start to analyze the logs, and use that to build policy as well as you get going. All right, so any questions here? I'm trying to be mindful of the time as well. I think there was a request for someone to cover EdgeConnect towards the end of this call.
Yes,
Dan.
Yes, but Matt, I did also have one question.
Send it.
For, obviously Pensando is an emerging resource. You guys are making major waves in a positive way with new folks. But when you're introducing someone to Pensando, they're getting getting Pensando implemented within their environment. What does that look like as far as start to finish, getting that comfort level, building in their use cases, and then effectively becoming Pensando fluent? What does that look like from your perspective as the person who works with them? And how long is that taking, have you seen with folks? So, if you could give kind of a use case or a sample on that.
Sure, yeah, great question. I think the first thing is, your familiarity with CX, right? If you're already using CX and you already have it in your environment, then you're already familiar with the Aruba operating platform. And then it's just, we're talking about how to add the services in. Typically what we see for customers is if they don't have the CX 10,000, and this, by the way, would be both use cases, current CX and not. If you don't have the CX 10,000 in the environment, what we want to understand is the topology. We want to know how the networking first. Make the networking work just like you have it today. Remember, this is a fully compliant AOS CX device. So if you can put it into your environment and you can map it to the topology that you use, you can either do incremental adds like a brownfield. Maybe you're rolling it over. You can convert configs over. If it's completely greenfield, you can build that up as well. So we're seeing that. That's initially what we have. The conversations we have is just understanding the topology and which traffic are you planning to eventually do stateful inspection on. From there, what we talk about is how do we turn this on and just give you visibility, right? So typically, the same thing is when you introduce some sort of new security service in a new location, you don't really know exactly what those policies and those rules are going to look like. So the next step after we understand the topology and have the networking, working as expected, we turn on the stateful services for visibility. Send us everything. Don't deny anything. Let's log it. Let's figure out what it looks like. How do we get these logs out to your appliances so that you can understand them, you can read them, they start making sense. That's the second step. And then from there, this is where it gets a little bit more specific on the customer. What is the security posture that you're aiming for, right? Is it a zero trust kind of situation where you want to allow only the things that have been allowed through your request system? Do you want to build a standard security posture where you saw where I was showing you some of the standard services that run? Maybe you want only certain VLANs to talk to other VLANs, depending on how you have your system, your network laid out. And then what that helps to do is that helps us to understand what the security policies need to look like, right? What are they going to be? How enforceable are they going to be? Are they going to be very strict? And then the day two, we kind of call it day two, like how do you operate that? How do you make changes to that going forward? And that usually takes, it takes a bit of time, right? It takes a bit of time. There's usually some outages that have to occur as you're putting hardware in and out of the network. So we're seeing anywhere from, I would say, 60 days probably up to, maybe it could be up to 6 months at recurring intervals, where if we've turned on the visibility for, say, we let it run for a certain period of time, and then we go back and do some log analysis to understand what it is that you're seeing, make sure that they're comfortable with that, so that they know how to address the rule base that they want to build. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question that you had there.
I think it does. And well, just as a last point, I guess, when you're looking at a start to finish, you know, we want to try to make sure that we're providing those we work with as much support as possible. You can't necessarily predict how long that startup time is going to be for them. For some folks, it may be a month. For some folks, depending on the size of their infrastructure, the number of resources they're supporting, it could be longer. How are you kind of tracking and measuring that? What are the important questions that a customer should be asking themselves to try to see kind of how big they are as far as what they're looking at, and kind of where Pensando is going to fit to try to make that a manageable process for them?
Yes. Yeah, I think that the biggest is really what are the goals, right? If this is a full, say, network redesign, well, there's other considerations that have to be made as well, and we're a part of that process. If the idea is I have this network and I'm trying to figure out how to insert these services, then that's a very clear place for us to start to understand, okay, these are the ways that these are the things that we will need to do in order to get the hardware in the network positioned so that we can offer these types of services. But I will kind of also elaborate or swing back to another point is, a lot of, I mentioned topology, we were talking about the management plane here. I mean, a lot of it comes down to, what does that need to look like in order, and then you kind of say, okay, if the traffic comes in, what are the things that I need to do? But how do I need to build that infrastructure so that I can make these things happen, right? And a lot of that happens on the management plane. That's the interface between maybe the VMware environment or the PSM and AFC. And we've actually done some work on building out virtualized environments that have those components in it. That gives us the ability to build a mock, say, fabric that matches the customer's infrastructure using a VM image from Aruba. We can use AFC to control them and to build them, and we can start getting comfortable using those tools on how we're actually going to build this, right? Then we take that data, those things that we have, and we can actually put it into physical hardware. Because one of the things that the virtual side doesn't give us is the ability to actually do the stress test and the actual scale, right? But we can start to build out what this is going to look like, build the configurations. I'll give you an example. Say they're moving to some sort of a new overlay, right? Maybe they want to build out some sort of new overlay, or maybe they're switching or adding it in. We can actually build out all that configuration, all that networking information. We can build out what those policies need to look like. We can test it on VMs, and then we can take that and transfer it to a physical space, a physical infrastructure where you've already done that kind of planning work. And now you actually get to go test it. So, or the hope there is that that's going to take out a lot of that wasted time of doing it, right? We want to know what the ideas are. We want to be able to build a replica to show the concept. Does the concept work? And then as soon as the customer is ready, we already have that configuration that we can then send over to them, and they can start from there. So,
Gotcha. And that sounds like it would also make it an easier, more manageable process if you're kind of keeping your network infrastructure the way it is, or the design the way it is, but implementing Pensando maybe to fill a gap, like a small gap here and there as well, correct?
Absolutely. And the other thing it helps us do is it helps us really be more clear and have more input on helping them figure out the automation that may be needed in order to do these types of things, right? Especially at scale. So it's not like we would just provide it to you and say, hey, figure out how to automate this. We can actually show you that process at a small scale, but it really, it's the same thing. You just, what I mean? Like when you have more devices, it just happens more times, right? But we can actually start to show you, hey, what do these calls need to look like? What do these integrations need to look like? what information can we do? Basically like the template, right? We can build the template without having to do anything for the customer other than provide us the information that matches what they want to see. And then when we go back to them, or when we go on site, when they actually want to start seeing it or building it, in a real environment, they're going to have so much information already. They're going to be able to start, with hit the ground running, basically.
Okay, fantastic. And Matt, I don't want to take the screen share away from you unless I think everybody. I don't see any questions in here, so I think for right now, at least the viewers are okay. If anything does come up while I'm speaking, I'm going to speak briefly about EdgeConnect. Please feel free to drop your questions in the chat or in the Q&A portion, and we'll definitely make sure that we're circling back to those. I will say that for this discussion that we're doing today on EdgeConnect and Pensando are a part of sort of Aruba's effort to unify the network and to bring resources in that can be managed together to give greater visibility, as well as make it easier to manage and configure. So this is going to be something that is a part of our Aruba unification series as we continue to talk about different resources within the Aruba universe or Aruba environment that can assist and support with networking, network segmentation, as well as network security, because there's no point to a network if it can't be secure. We're of course going to have, and I know for Dan and Matt, they don't necessarily want to hear this, but we are going to have a variety of these programs to highlight some of the value and impact that different partners we work with have available for our customers. And we understand that our customers work with a wide array of resources. So I don't want to say that you guys have to go in one direction or another, but we do want to make sure that everybody is as informed as possible about everything that's out there. And I know it can be hard to keep track of that. So this is EdgeConnect, which is another Aruba resource. That's HPE Aruba's SD-WAN platform for wide area network and cloud-first enterprises. So in talking about in the cloud-first enterprises, I don't want to make it seem as though you got to be, heavily utilizing AWS or Azure to be considered cloud-first. Everybody is utilizing the cloud let me not say everyone. Many people are using the cloud in some capacity. There are still some folks who utilize entirely on-prem resources, and there's always a reason for why folks have built their infrastructure in the way that they have. But for many folks, they are utilizing, email or some type, maybe Workday, some type of program that is SaaS-based, cloud-based. So as we're bringing all of these different resources together, managing things that are on-prem, off-prem, cloud-based, all these different types of things, how can you unify and manage everything in a more singular way? Not to say that, managing different resources can't be easy, but is there a way to make it a little bit easier for those that are doing it every day? So when we talk about unification of network resources, that's what the EdgeConnect is about. And as we had Matt talking about Pensando, that effort to provide greater clarity, visibility, and then to fit resources in that are going to provide a way to fill gaps and to address some of those day-to-day challenges of knowing what's going on, being able to push out the right policies and resources quickly, and to manage what's going on across your network. EdgeConnect is another element of that. And as we see these different elements here, your data center, your on-prem resources, your cloud-based resources, or as in the top right corner, AWS, Google, and Azure, the cloud, and how you're utilizing those resources. And just briefly, Aruba EdgeConnect is that attempt to address zero trust, as we're talking about the zero trust network and bringing everybody to zero trust. For some folks we speak with, they're still trying to figure out what zero trust means for them. What is the difference? And we're going to also have another series on that, which will be the difference between segmentation and zero trust. What is the benefit of one compared to the other? And if you're doing one, are you basically doing both? I think there's still a bit of clarity that some folks are looking for that we speak with from time to time. So that's something that we're going to be providing as well in the future. But speaking specifically about EdgeConnect again, that attempt to build sort of a one-click solution for zero trust, making that process as easy as possible, because having a unified way to manage not just the traffic, but also know what's going on across your network is incredibly important as we're looking at what security means for us today. And security isn't harder just because of all the people that are coming after you. It's harder because of all of the things that you have to manage and all the people that you have to support along the way. So with SD-WAN paired with a next-gen firewall, and as we talk about how Pensando can be paired with a firewall to boost that, those different ways that you can layer in and combine or utilize the resources you have now to try to amplify them, again, while covering all of those bases. And I think Matt had mentioned the security posture. When you're talking about where are you trying to get to, what security posture you're aiming for, you're trying to protect against those threats with the always on zero trust. That goes back to EdgeConnect's effort to build a one-click zero trust solution or an easy to implement zero trust solution through that platform. Being able to deliver a consistent security policy enforcement, which Matt, I guess I'll go back to what you guys do at Pensando, being able to help with that process as well. And then, of course, central management. You're looking at a single platform for your SD-WAN, security, routing, and WAN optimization. But being able to have greater visibility goes along with being able to have greater control. I want to make sure that I'm not stating this as though it's the only solution out there or one size fits all. Because again, I do understand that everybody utilizes what they use. That may be something different or it may be something the same. But I would like to ensure that everyone understands we will take the time to understand what it is that you're doing, what it is that you need, and make sure that you have something that fits your needs rather than just taking something that we've heard or been told and assuming that it's going to work for you without knowing what it is that you do and what you need every day. And as we're looking at EdgeConnect, I did want to mention one use case, going to the templates and the attempt to make EdgeConnect a one-click zero trust solution. They utilize or have available a wide variety of templates, and you can push those templates out to make your initial setup and configuration process a lot easier. This individual at Universal Health Systems, Ken Fitzpatrick, this is not one of DOF's customer. This is a reference from EdgeConnect and through Aruba, stated that it was the way that it was easy to configure and also supported their network performance that really sold them on EdgeConnect. So when we're looking at something that we're seeing across a lot of our manufacturer partners is the attempt to make everything one click or as easy to use as possible. It's not just about the performance, but it's about being able to manage everything, because as we're seeing, particularly in the security space, the harder it is to understand where an issue is coming from, to troubleshoot and alert, to understand what device is on your network or where this device might be at and what it's connected to. Those are all things that get in the way of being able to respond or remediate an issue very quickly. The longer it takes to fix the problem is potentially the greater risk you're exposing yourself to. So as we're looking at that ease of use, ease of management, being able to see and track and understand what's going on in a single space, or to easily bring together a variety of resources is incredibly valuable right now. And I would say that, while we are discussing Aruba resources today, there are a variety that are doing that. And I think something has come up in the chat. Oh, we are pushing up on time. Thank you for that. I don't know if anybody has any questions remaining. We do have a few minutes left until we hit that 2 o'clock time. But if nobody has anything left, feel free to have a couple minutes back in your day. But we greatly appreciate everyone's time, the opportunity to go through a live demo with Matt and Dan today from the Pensando team, the opportunity to discuss some things as it related to grants, identifying grant opportunities, and a couple of programs that will be coming up in the near future, as well as an introduction to EdgeConnect. So please keep an eye out for our next programming on EdgeConnect as well. Viv, did you have anything?
No, thank you. Great job, guys.
All right. I know one person had to leave. If there's anybody else, we're wrapping up now, but if anyone has any questions, please feel free while you have us.
I just have a quick question on the Pensando firewall part. How does grouping like source and destination on the switches, do you make a zone for certain ports? How does that part work?
As far as like, how do you, in the rules or?
Yeah, like in the rules as
Okay.
as an object, I'm assuming is, you know, you might have like, you want these certain ports to be server segment, next one may be DMZ, such and such. So
I got
how
you.
do
So one of the ways to think about it, when you're comparing it to like zone based, is that VLAN tag, right? So that as a zone, like in a zone based firewall, the zone dictates which policies are gonna that first packet is going to adhere to, right? You have to match the zone, and then here's the policies that you get for it. If you don't match the zone, these policies don't exist for you. So we do the same type of concept with that network tag, right? So if you have traffic that's on, say, you know, network 100, you would build a policy so that the IPs or the subnets that's assigned to that network 100, that's what it would adhere to. So the zone and the network tag are somewhat the same, because if you don't match the network tag, then the policy might not adhere to you, right? Because you want to be part of that subnet.
Okay. All right.
And then,
Adrian,
you know,
did
obviously
that
to the
address the issue?
Sorry, what was that?
I said, did that answer the question?
It did, yeah.
Okay.
And this is Dan. One thing I'd add to that is if anybody wants to do a dedicated one-on-one design session where we talk about your use cases and where the CX10K may or may not be a good fit, we're more than happy to do that. Just reach out to Syed and he'll manage the scheduling with us, and we're more than happy to talk about your environment and if it is a good fit or not.
Yeah, Dan, I think we had one on the agenda before. I think we probably would want to do that. Carolyn, if you do want us to give you that one-on-one session, I think these guys might have just whet the appetite. I think having a personalized demo or scoping session would be beneficial. So Adrian, if you want to do that, we'll schedule, and also Carolyn.
Yeah, I would, I'd still be interested in that, Viv.
Okay, then we will, Matt and Dan, we will schedule these two customers with you, and we'll get some time and dates that work for you all.
Sounds good.
All right, guys. Well, thank you all very, very much. We're at 2 p.m. We thank you all for participating. And Dan and Matt, thank you so much for continuing to support us in this effort.
Happy to. Thanks for inviting us.
Bye-bye, guys.
thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.